Good day to my BSBA FM3C and FM3 students. So since you have already formulated your research titles and research topic for the methods and business research, now you are ready uh, for the formulation and writing of your introduction, statement of the problem, the objectives of the study, all subsections and parts of the first chapter of the thesis. Okay, so first is in writing our background, or the first chapter of the research is the introduction or the rationale of the study. So basically, when we say the introduction or the background of the study, this pertains to a part or section of the chapter 1 wherein it specify or it it discusses the research gap, okay, the research gap of the study. When we say research gap, basically this is the it tells or it states the existing issue or existing problem that that is the cause or that is the basis of why we are conducting this study. So one of the most important thing about the introduction is that if you can clearly state, if you can clearly explain or discuss in this section the research gap, okay, remember the word research gap, then the justification of conducting this study is acceptable for the critics, for the panel members of the defense. That is why this is very important. If you cannot formulate or write your introduction well, there is a big possibility that your paper will not be accepted. That is why it is very important that you formulate your introduction very well, okay? So for the introduction again, it is important to give the reader a clear notion of the general scope of the problem investigated. So in the very first part of your introduction, you have to establish a clear background or information on the existing problem or issue of your research study or topic. Okay? So how are you going to establish a clear discussion or clear explanation that an issue or a problem really do exist? So you may provide data or statistics to justify or to validate those issues or problems that you are pertaining to. Remember that research is an objective document. It is an objective study. So there's no room here for observation. There's no room here for opinionated statement. Opinionated statement is not acceptable for the introduction. That is why you have to provide references, sources, data, and statistics for the problem or issues that you are pertaining to, so to give your research gap justifications and validity. Okay? So it could be in a deductive method from the country to the province up to the local level. You may present the problem or issue first in a country level, down to the provincial level, down to the local level. So that is the deductive approach. Okay? So after explaining or discussing the research gap, if you are satisfied enough that your research gap has been explained, has been stated well in your introduction, okay, so now you may now give an overview of what are the variables of your study. So we already discussed the independent variables in the formulation of your topic or title. So now you may give additional information or overview of those variables in your introduction, as well as a little bit information about the locale of the study or where your study will be conducted. Okay? So now let us move on to the statement of the problem. Aside from the introduction and title, the statement of the problem is probably the most important. It is the most important because any changes in your statement of the problem will cause changes or adjustments to all parts of your study. Pag nagbago ang indicators at pag nagbago ang variables mo na nakalagay sa statement of the problem, lahat ng parte ng iyong research study ay posibleng mabago din. Okay? So, this is basically the same with the objectives of the study. Ang pinagkaiba lamang is that the statement of the problem is in a question form, while the objectives of the study is in a declarative form. We have to remember the word smart or smarter. When we say smart, from the word S, so it's specific. Your research problem and objectives should be specific, meaning to say the variables in the study, the variables in your statement of the problem and objectives should be quantifiable if it's in a quantitative study. When we say quantifiable, it is measurable, okay, which is also the same with the second element or second letter, which is M, measurable. Next, it should be achievable, okay, it should be achievable. So basically, if the scope and coverage of your study is in a local level, then make sure that the data that you are going to gather can be collected. Okay, meaning to say you may have the resources, you have the time and the energy to collect and gather the data, because it is within your capacity, such as it is near your municipality, it is within your municipality, it is within the province. So that could be a good justification for the uh, achievable requirement for objectives and statement of the problem. Next is that it should be realistic. So when we say realistic, basically it is also a continuation of your introduction, wherein in order to provide that there really is a problem, that there really is an issue, you have to support those issues and problems with data, statistics, and references and sources. Okay, next, it is time bound. So research is time bound. Make sure that you can finish your study within a certain period of time, because the data, the information in the result expires. Okay, basically, some of your data and results will not be valid for a certain period of time because the information lapses. So those are the requirements for writing your statement of the problem on objectives of the study. You have to follow the acronym SMART. Okay, to give you a better example, okay, again, here is an example of a research problem and statement of the problem in the thesis writing. Okay, so let me give you this one. Uh-huh. Okay, declarative statements or the objectives of the study. Okay, these are the instances of following questions. So in the statement of the problem, it is an interrogative statement wherein it is in a question form. So let's say, for example, your general problem starts at what are the business practices employed by farmers and the relative profitability of off-season farming in San Jose Occidental, Mindoro. So again, we have to go back with your variables. We have to identify first the independent and then the dependent variable. It should also be in the statement of the problem. So as we can see, the independent variable here, or the element or variable that causes changes or influences the other variable, is the business practices. Okay, so what are being influenced, what are being changed, what are being affected? So that would be the profitability. Okay, so this would be your the dependent variable. Okay, so here are examples of the indicators. So in writing your statement of the problem, indicators are very important. You have your independent variable or the main variables. You have your independent variables, you have your dependent variables. However, the indicators or the specific elements that you are going to study in that variable is also very important, because this will be very important in computing, in identifying what analytical tool or statistical tool are we going to use in this study. Okay, so let's say, for example, the business practices, just like what we've we've discussed previously as an example also, the business practices is your independent variable. So in formulating your research problem or statement of the problem, so you are going to put indicators of business practices. So when we say indicators, so in Tagalog or in simpler terms, paano mo ma-measure ang business practices? Anong elements ng business practices ang iyong specifically i-measure doon sa off-season farming? Okay, ano bang uri ng mga example ng business practices? Ano bang mga business practices na kailangan natin i-employ? So it is in terms of marketing. So ang business practices kasi, it is very broad. Maraming pwedeng pag-aralan, maraming pwedeng data na mag-gather. So ano yung mga specific business practices na iyon? Siyempre, number one is the marketing. You could employ business practices in terms of marketing, in terms of human resource, in terms of finance, in terms of operation. So these are indicators. This marketing, human resource, finance, and operations are example of business practices. Okay, so you have to give at least two indicators under the variable, so that your study will be more specific and will be more measurable. These indicators and this variable will also be operationally defined in the last part of your chapter 1 or the introduction and background of your study. Okay? Next, so this is your number 1. The number 1 question in the statement of the problem pertains to the independent variable. Do not forget. Okay? The number 2 is about the dependent variable. If you only have one independent variable, then the next question, doon na tayo magpo-proceed sa dependent variable or the profitability. Okay? To determine the level of profitability of off-season farming in San Jose Occidental, Mindoro in terms of income and return on investment. Again, there are indicators. Okay? So, the income and return on investment, meaning to say, we can measure profitability through income and through return on investment because profitability is very broad, masyadong malawak. Okay, so this is an example of a good justification why we need to put at least two indicators under a variable or under the variables. Okay? So this is the most important part of your research problem. Most important part of the whole study is the research problem or the statement of the problem and the objectives of the study. Make sure that you choose your variables well and you research your indicators well. How are you going to identify the indicators? Saan mo makikita o paano mo malalaman ang indicators mo? By searching for related references, by searching for related literatures. I-search mo ang business practices na may kinalaman sa off-season farming or sa agriculture. Okay, kung sa tingin mo may marketing doon, may human resource doon, may finance at may operations doon, then you may include also these indicators in the statement of the problem. Okay, ganun din sa may profitability. Kung sa tingin mo sa mga related references and resources, merong income at return on investment or profitability in off-season farming can be measured through income and return on investment, then ilagay mo doon sa statement of the problem mo. Kaya lagi dapat you are ready to research, to look for related references or related study doon sa iyong napiling topic o sa napili mong title. Okay, and then the last part is basically tells you the research design. What particular research design, i-discuss natin yan doon sa iyong chapter 3. So in this example, to determine which of the business practices significantly influences the profitability of off-season farming. So this is a descriptive, predictive research design. I will discuss the research design later on after this one para ma-formulate ninyo ang inyong research problem ng mas maayos. Okay, i-skip ko yung ibang part muna for the meantime, i-discuss ko ang research design. And then after that, I will give this as an activity. Ito ang pinakauna nating uunahin activity at baka magtagal tayo dito because this is considered one of the most important part of your research paper. Okay? Thank you for listening.